Let me start very basically and ask JJ and Matt, also in the case of Felicity, where these characters came from. You know, how they came to you. Were they based on any real people? How and why did they come to you?
It was, I think, the week before graduation at my high school, and there was this student there. She was always drawing, and she was very quiet. She was really quiet, but she always did the posters for like the plays and stuff, and they were great. I mean, she was a genius, and I'd never talked to her. And all of a sudden, we were graduating, and it just occurred to me, I'm like, I never talked to her, and you see her all the time. You see her every day, and suddenly, at the end of high school, everyone goes off to do their thing, and I would probably not see her again. So I just went up to her to say, I think you're brilliant. I think you're an amazing artist because you just do this amazing stuff. And she thought I was a freak. I mean, she was like, she's like, thanks.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm Felicity Porter.
Yeah, I know. I'm back.
Yeah, I know. I was just wondering if you would mind signing my yearbook.
Can you give me just a minute to do this?
Oh, yeah. Sure, So, this is what Ben wrote. Dear Felicity, I've watched you for 4 years, always wondered what you were like, what was going on in your mind all that time we were so quiet, just thinking, drawing in your notebook. I should have just asked you, but I never asked you. So now, 4 years later, I don't even know you, but I admire you. Well, this makes me sound crazy, but I'm okay with that. So take care of yourself.
Hey!
Love, Ben.
Where are you going to college?
New York. What about you?
That's pretty unclear.
Just by coincidence, there was an event, a charity event that Keri went to, and this woman who I went to high school with, who was the artist, was there. And I told her that, I don't know if you know this, but you're the inspiration for Felicity, and she thought I was a freak. And I brought her over to meet Keri, and it was surreal for me. I was like, oh my God, that's the person who,
And for me, I think, it's one of the things, because it's weird, like when you talk about story, it's like each person, I think, is trying to find their way into what is something that they want to express or whatever. And I know that we were talking about like all this stuff, and one of the things that got me very excited about what we were talking about is how she does this crazy thing and how awkward it would make sort of Ben feel, and like how insane it sort of was, and how sort of spastic and unformed she was. And I had recently broken up with a girlfriend of mine, and in my head, it was like, okay, I always imagined Felicity in this, like as partially in my head as this woman that I went out with, who I know you know, and we were talking, and one of the things that I remember she used to always say to me is, she would preface like monumental moments with things like, so I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want you really to feel weird about this at all, which was not really a good way to preface something that was like an earth-shattering news. I was like, oh, okay, well, because already I feel awful.
So what's going on?
I just want to preface this by saying that I don't want you to feel weird about anything I'm about to say at all.
Okay.
The thing is, I came to New York mostly because of you. Yeah, I had these sort of intense feelings for you back in high school. Anyway, maybe the fact that we never did talk was why I had those feelings. Because now, of course, I realize now that it was a crazy thing to do to follow someone, I don't know, 3,000 miles. And I sort of panicked about it, but I just wanted you to know that I'm past that, and I'm totally okay with it now. I mean it, because it's not really about you so much anymore. I'm here now, because I'm here.
Was there much Felicity in you?
I don't know. I mean, I related to the character a lot, and I still do. But I think that's the great thing about acting, is you get to, yeah, people don't perceive you in this certain way, but you may be more so that inside, and then you get to do it.
Well, what ways did you relate to Felicity?
Well, I definitely relate to the nervousness and the awkwardness, and it was really great to get to play that every day. But I also really liked her naivete and her hopefulness. I mean, that's always a good thing to be reminded of every day.
Have you ever felt like there's no solace in anything? Like wherever you turn, you're just lost? I mean, I've never felt so lost in every conceivable way before. Okay, help me. Go. Start.
All right. Well, okay, this is what I think. You're forgetting something very important. You're forgetting who you are in the equation. You gotta know you're gonna be fine. Okay?
You think?
I do. Oh, no. Oh, that really changes my whole attitude about you.
I'm so sorry.
When people come up to me and say, I've literally seen every episode of Alias, the only reason I believe them is because I've seen every episode of Felicity. And I'm such a fan. But I wanted so badly to have that kind of ease. I mean, I just did a Keri thing with my hand. I'm sorry, I don't know if you know. But I wanted so badly to have that kind of, that ease that Keri has and the quietness in her acting.
I have a question for you. It always got me the decision between picking Noel or Ben, and I always wanted Noel, but that's okay. So the first season, it left it with like the decision, and then of course through the rest of the years, you also you kind of kept going back and forth. Did you ever have any say or like feel one way or the other, like through Felicity, how Felicity felt about it? Do you think?
You're asking me?
Like, did you have any influence on the writing of like who got picked each? Like,
No. No, but I thought they were both so perfect. I mean, I thought what they represented was so great. You know, it's so rare that a girl in college would actually get to both choices. Ben, it was obviously great. He was like the fantasy that, you know, she couldn't have. But what was great about the Noel character was I just thought, I loved those scenes where it was really fast talking and, you know, there was always disaster striking.
Here.
Hold on.
What's wrong?
I was just thinking that maybe we should slow down just a little, you know, let me catch my breath, not feel like this is being nationally televised. Okay? Go! Whoa.
I thought you locked the door.
You didn't give me much chance. Wow. Okay, wait, no, nobody panic. I'll go out in a second. It'll be out in a second. Wait.
Oh my God.
Wait, nobody panic. Look, we can do this.
No, your room is on fire.
And JJ, I wanted to ask you about the final episodes of Felicity because it ended and it was great. And then you had this brilliant final few episodes and then when you tried to explain it to someone who was a fan, like, oh wait, she goes back in time, and they look at you like you're nuts, but it was so amazing. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Matt should actually talk about that because the truth is I was sort of deeply embroiled in the first season of Alias during that. I was there, we were all in the same office. It was actually an incredible year because both shows were happening in the same place, and so you'd look out and like, Ben would be playing basketball with Weiss, and I'd be like, is he Sean or Weiss? Because it's the same guy. But the thing is that when we did those last episodes, we thought we were going to be canceled 17 episodes in.
Well, what happened was at the beginning of the season, actually, it was a very strange meeting we had. We sat down for our first sort of meeting to talk about what we were going to do. We knew it was the year she was graduating. I wasn't sure exactly what would happen after that, although we'd always talked about the idea of what her life might be after that. And the network came in, and this was before any shows had aired. We were coming up with the stories for the season, and in essence, the network person said, now, this is the last season of the show. And we were like, oh. And so we're like, okay, well, that makes things very clear. And they had another show that the previous season, we'd done this thing where we aired, and then they put in another, I think the show was called Jack and Jill, and that aired for part of the season, and then we came back, and they were going to do that again with us. And what happened was, partway through, as we were doing all of our shows, they called us up and they said, okay, and we just knew we were going to build to Felicity's graduation, that was what was really important to us. And they said, okay, so you're going to have 17 or you're going to have 22. And we said, okay, you want to let us know whether we're going to have 17 or 22? And they said 17 or 22. And so we said, okay, well, why don't we shoot for 22, because that sounds good to us. So we kept working on the stories, and then at a certain point they called us up and said, we think it's going to be 17. And we were like, okay, so it's going to be 17. And we thought, well, what would be terrible to the fans would be if the show ended and Felicity didn't graduate. That would be like, oh, I went to college, and then the show just stopped. So it just seemed like, well, we can't possibly do that. So we called up the network executive, and this guy, he said to me, he said, I assure you, 17 is the number. Well, they put on this show. Don't know what it was, actually. It was some kind of weird show. I don't know. Didn't do well. And so they said, oh, okay, well, we're going to need more shows. But we'd already done, and actually Scott Foley directed the final episode of this series, which was a great episode about the graduation. It was really emotional. And we were all like so happy with it. And then as that's going on, they said, yeah, and now we need 5 more. And we said, well, that's great, because she's graduated. And they said, well, maybe what would be great is if you had summer school. We said, she's graduated. It was like the worst idea for a story I'd ever heard. I was like, the thing is about how she graduated. And so, and maybe she will take some Spanish. Like, I don't know. Basically, the idea was, well, we'd pursued the story this way. Instead of like doing summer school in Spanish, what if we saw what would happen if she made a different choice? And we thought, what an interesting sort of way to go. And so we just had fun with it. We had no idea. And Jennifer Levin did just an incredible job. She did so much of the writing last year. She basically ran the writer's room in the show. And she did beautiful, beautiful scripts. And that last section was so... Felicity had gone through a lot of very difficult stuff that year. And all of a sudden, there was, by virtue of the fact that Felicity knew what had happened, because apparently she'd seen the series too, she had this like new burst of life. And so Keri embraced it so well. And that's really... We just had this... It was really just a quirk. It was like we thought the series was going to end in one place, but it ended later, and it just ended up being this sort of fun gift where it was like, okay, well, we'll go back, and for people who followed the show, they'll know that this is, and they'll be just where Keri is, which is she'll just enter this world and say, okay, well, I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to do this. And they thought, well, what'll be fun is once she thinks that she has the whole thing, that at a certain point there are going to be emotional consequences, and it won't be as easy to just say, well, you know what, go to hell, Ben. And be like, oh, well, I guess I still kind of like Ben. And so we wanted to find a way so that the story would still end in the same place.
If you had it to do over, you know, you could go back. What would you do differently?
Everything. I'd pick Noel. I think I made a mistake. A big mistake. Hindsight, you know.
Screw hindsight. We've got something better.
You said that, you know, the idea for Sydney and Alias came at a writer's meeting at Felicity. How much Felicity is there in Sydney, and how much Sydney is there in Felicity?
What happened was, and you know, it's not like, it wasn't literally from Felicity, but we were in our second season?
No, third
season, yeah. I was in the writer's room, and everyone was sitting around, and we were, I think, just staring at each other. And then we had lunch. We came back, and I said, you know, what would be awesome would be if Felicity were a spy, because then she could go out and she could, like, you know, kick ass and do these missions and come back, and she couldn't tell Ben, she couldn't tell Noel, no one could know, you know. And you know, all the writers were like, you know, like, yeah, nice fantasy world.
No, but you know, but you were serious. It really seemed like you were very serious.
Well, there was a minute where I thought, like, you know, they do have CIA recruiters at college, and I thought maybe.
I love Alias, love it, but I really miss Felicity. Is there any chance Keri's going to be on Alias?
I've asked Keri if she would ever do it, and I usually get this sort of like giggle, and then she hangs up. So, I would love to work with Keri on anything, and if she ever were to, you know, grace our presence, we would be better for it. So I hope it happens.
But actually, come on as Felicity.
No, you look like Hannah.
I'm like,
that'd be
Hannah?
cool. Hannah, no.
And I steal your boyfriend.
I got the glass.